Kevin might be interesting.
Okay, let's talk to Kevin in New York. Kevin, you're live with Eric and Jim.
Hey,
We're
hey,
backing up against a wall at 3 for Atheist Vanguard, and we do have to take other callers. So I hate to be, pushing through, but I want to make sure that we have time to talk to you and about what you want to talk about.
okay. All right. Thank you for that. Well, I wanted to get into why I believe that there's a soul.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I mean, I also wanted to ask you guys why it is the way that you think that it is, because with the vast array of information that we can take in today, we're able to see and read about or whatever other people's testimony and what they've experienced.
Mm-hmm.
But what having to do with the soul and the atheist opinion, but I don't want to try to build a straw man. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that there isn't a soul, and that all these testimonies that are out there are people having auditory or visual hallucinations, because
Sure. I'll actually agree with you. People do have auditory and visual hallucinations, and I think they have it a whole lot more than our society recognizes. That said, there's a little bit more to it, and I want to give you an example to try and help illustrate that. I remember reading a news article, and I would love for people in the live chat and in the comments to help link this. But I read about a cancer research institute that had developed what they considered to be a cure for cancer, right? Upon investigation, it turns out that there was a really high mortality rate, that it was atrocious. But what they were doing is they were doing something called counting the hits and ignoring the misses. Right? What they were doing was, everyone who survived, they had them write a testimony. And when you went to their website or you looked them up, you would see this mountain of testimonies. The problem is, we have no way of knowing how many those are out of. We don't know whether or not it was cherry picked. And if we look at near-death experiences, right, which is, I think, what you're pointing towards, is it? I don't want to assume.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we're talking about near-death experiences, there is a rational explanation for most of it. That's what happens when your brain gets deprived of oxygen. And those are the kinds of things that happen as you are losing consciousness and dying. The process of dying is that, and your imagination fills in a lot, especially after the fact. And curiously, if you were to hear about near-death experiences, it seems to match their already preconditioned beliefs. So if you have a Christian, they're going to see heaven. But if you have a non-Christian who believes in another thing that happens after death, they think they saw that other thing as well. Because of that, we now have a mix of things. We have potentially counting the hits and ignoring the misses. By the way, that Cancer Institute moved to another country and are still doing it. They're still taking desperate people who are dying, and it's really atrocious. How do we get away from that? You're pointing at anecdotal evidence, right? Those personal testimonies. What I'm saying is, how do we determine whether or not that's a reliable sample?
Well, people can take this as whatever they want and don't necessarily have to follow the Christian example, because yes, I've heard that too, that when people perceivably have near-death experiences, that they see whatever God or religion that they fell under during their lifetime. But the auditory and visual hallucinations denote that it has some type of randomization to it, which I I don't buy. You know what I mean? And one thing that I've learned is that you could talk to any neurological doctor and say that it at least takes 6 minutes of the brain being deprived of oxygen in which it starts dying, and it is impossible to produce both auditory and visual hallucinations then.
Not true. So I can tell you I've experienced auditory and hallucinations well before 6 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was taking drugs, but that's still proof of concept.
I was completely sober.
Yeah.
And mostly asleep.
Because
Yeah.
This is a process. You know what I mean? And you know, those under the 6 minutes, your body is going through the process of dying, but not yet dead. And that's when your brain starts acting in strange ways.
And so the question is, really, is there a ghost in the machine? Right? Is there something piloting this meat sack, this body? Is there some ghost that's inhabiting it? How have you determined that there's something outside of us or outside of our physical existence that continues to move on and exist? How did you determine that we have souls or something like it?
Well, because it's a very good idea to go about this with a skeptical mind, but because of the testimonies that people have, it's a mistake to dismiss all of them.
So let me ask you this. If somebody comes up to you and says they spoke to someone you know is dead because you watched them die and bury them, should you take that as true, or should you dismiss it? And more importantly, how would you go about determining whether that person actually experienced talked to the dead person after they were dead? How would you go about determining either position was true, either that he did in fact do that or that he did not? How would you go about determining that is true?
Or false? Well, that goes into a lot of things. I would dismiss them telling me that.
Okay.
Because I would know that I'd have to locally be there. They'd have to reproduce what they experienced, so I could experience it in the exact same way.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Let's say it's 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Let's say it's 1,000 people. Same story. Now, how do you determine? Do you now believe them because there's 1,000 of them? Same story, same situation. The only difference is instead of one person telling you this, it's 1,000 people.
That's only if their stories have consistency to it.
They're consistent.
Yes.
What does the number have to do with whether or not the number of people who accept a story is true? What does that have to do with the story actually being true?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. Well, because I don't know. In some cases, it's a little bit of a stretch. In some cases, what people talk about as what they experience has an immediate or direct effect on them or the people surrounding them, and so that story has to have consistency to it in order for you to know that it's the truth.
But what does a consistent story have to do with its story being true?
Well, it's off of the inherent thinking that not everybody lies. I mean, I don't know.
They don't even have to lie.
Yeah, they don't have to lie. Example.
I know.
Can I give you an example?
I know that everybody. I know that everybody's perception is due to to being falsified because they're perceiving it, say, from a different angle from another person.
Sure.
Uh,
Can we
but
can we plant this a little closer? Just I understand. I'm really glad you're there. So do you know how many people have cited Elvis after his death? Tons, right?
well, yeah. I mean,
I'm assuming you don't believe that Elvis faked his death and has been cited randomly like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness monster. And there's actually a name to this fallacy. Because it is a fallacious line of thinking, and Jim's walking you through it. For those people at home, it's called ad populum. Just because it's popular, just because a lot of people believe it, doesn't mean it's necessarily true. And just being religious it's not just a religious thing. It's a human thing. We thought the same about the ether in science and humors. There are so many things that we have mistook to be true. The teachings of Galen on medical history and knowledge of the human body. People thought just because it was popular that it was true. But that shouldn't be the reasoning. It should stand or fall on its own merits, and not whether or not a lot of people believe it.
yes. Well, yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Well, I mean, I'm a believer because things in the Bible, especially the people that were listed in there. Well, you got to understand one thing, that during Jesus' time, there actually was no such thing as a separation of government and state in such a way to where people had to. It was both consented by the people and the government that they should all register their names and even the children that they had, because they lived in such a different culture. It was very strict for one thing. And
I don't know where you're going with this.
I don't see where you're going.
Help us here.
Well, where I'm going with it is that the people in the Bible existed for sure, and
is it possible that the places existed and the people didn't?
No.
Why?
Is it possible that the places existed and the people didn't?
Yeah, the people depicted in the stories. Is it possible that they existed and didn't do all of the things that were said to have been done to them? We as humans tend to mythologize people over time, and we can see that the authorship of the Bible definitely shows enough time that we can say, you know what, that there can be a lot of mythology added in.
Well, still to this day, there are records both within Vatican and Jerusalem libraries containing the records of descendants that lived in the area during that time.
Sure. I challenge you to look into that and give us a call back, because I think that the more you look into extra biblical evidence for the existence of Jesus, and specifically, and I'm going to give this to you really, really specifically because I really want this, is evidence for the miracle claims. I would love to see that. I have not yet seen it yet. Not yet seen it yet. Isn't that just great English? I have not yet seen it. Anyway, Kevin, we've got a. What's up?
Okay. All right. Thanks for taking my call.
No worries. Hopefully, I had fun.
Yeah,
Jim.
definitely.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah. Take care, man.
You too. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.